Good day. Shaping car dependence instead of sustainable transport in Midrand. Counts the research gaps found within Midrand with regards to the limited understanding as to why people persist using their cars instead of sustainable transport. So, before I continue, I have to define what sustainable transport is. And simply put, it would be literally any medium of transport that seeks to use renewable resources that do not deplete. For example, rail, walking, electric vehicles, and trains. And obviously, in our case, the how train. So, as part of my research methods, I will be conducting an exploratory study that will be using a case study method to explore the uniqueness in the case of Midrand. So, to expand further what I mean by the uniqueness of Midrand is that cities generally go through three stages. The first stage being the walking stage, and then the transit stage, and then the car stage. So, with the case of Midrand, it jumped the first stage, and instead of being a stage one city, it went literally from stage 2 to 3. And this is why it's important to now try and investigate what could be done and how could people be influenced now to use sustainable transport instead of their cars. So in essence, the research method will also seek to also touch on the ethnographic side of things with regards with regards to looking at Midrand as a particular area that has particular characteristics that are unique from other areas, and obviously how the people there also inculcate themselves within the space based off the conditions that the space is now, bearing in mind the history that shaped it. Because knowing Midrand now has evolved into a linear node from the fact that it was originally an industrial, a business node, to a point whereby people understood they had to be closer to works and started developing there. So how now my podcast will be structured is, it's gonna now, firstly, the second part is gonna include an interview with a planner I did, Patrick Biles, and he will touch off his experience of planning and obviously give me a general breakdown, but an in-depth analysis as to why the transport situation is the way it is in Midrand. And in addition to it, to add nuance to the podcast, the third episode will now try and use some of the techniques we were taught in the course called Advanced Planning Thought, which are consciousness, voice, intelligence, and data. But in addition to that, we now, or rather I now, seek to now be more inclusive through engaging my fellow planners, Ronald and Endeavor. And then lastly, obviously, the last component would be the conclusion, which is just now me summing up the various information and knowledge that we got from the podcast, and tying it down to now getting to a point as to how my research will be more or less guided and structured.